Please take a moment to listen to this disclosure from the Common Ground podcast. The Common Ground podcast is dedicated to exploring commonality among individuals with diverse perspectives. Our guests may present unique worldviews related to health, psychology, and overall well-being. Please note that the Common Ground podcast does not directly promote or endorse any specific ideas, concepts, or actions discussed during our episodes. Listeners are encouraged to approach the information shared with discernment and to consult with their mental and/or physical health providers before making any changes to their health or wellness practices. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not directly reflect the opinions of the Common Ground podcast. Your well-being is important, and we advocate for informed decision-making. Thanks for listening.
And the reason that my parents were together was because they both struggled with a different subtype of narcissism. And just hearing what you're describing, it sort of sounds like malignant narcissism.
Narcissism is systemic in the home. Everybody participates in the narcissism. Can't get mad at somebody else for crossing your boundaries. If they cross your boundary, you have to take action as you have said you would.
Narcissists are still lovable in and of themselves, like that they have a core to themselves that is beyond that facade and that protection film, if you will, of narcissism. There's somebody.
Welcome to the Common Ground podcast, where stories connect, perspectives collide, and purpose is found in the middle.
Every week, we sit down with unique and inspiring guests that come from all walks of life, people who challenge the status quo, overcome the odds, and live with intentionality.
Whether you're driving to work, on your morning walk, or just looking for that spark to ignite your week, you're in the right place.
Welcome to the Common Ground podcast with your hosts, John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Common Ground podcast. I'm your host, Sydney Curtin. Joined with me is yours truly, my partner in crime and the brilliant minds behind the Common Ground podcast and the Common Ground Project USA, John Fletcher. Today, we have with us a special guest speaker, Shannon Farrar. Shannon is a graduate of the University of North Carolina with a 4.0 GPA, the development director and executive director since 2004. She's also the founder of a coaching and consulting business founded in 2022, and the host of a recently released podcast, Come Full Circle with Shannon, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, and Buzzsprout. Is that right? Buzzsprout? Very nice. Okay, I haven't heard of that one before. Shannon, thanks for being with us here today. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I want to thank y'all for having me, but also want to just clarify that I'm not with that organization anymore. I'm only doing my own full-time business.
Well, congratulations on starting that. That's
you.
Awesome. You've got a heck of a resume.
Yes, and we're glad to have you today. And like I do with every podcast, I am definitely going to open it up with some humor. And so, why didn't the elephant use the computer?
Why, John?
Because it was afraid of the mouse.
Okay, that one got me. Oh my goodness. I'm not going to traumatize our viewers with my poor humor. I'm going to leave that to the professional dad joker over here.
As a dad, as a longtime dad, yes, my kids would agree with the dad jokes. Well, again, we just want to thank you, Shannon, for being here with us today. And so why don't you tell everybody where you're calling in from today?
Sure. I am here in Mint Hill, North Carolina, which is literally right across the border from Charlotte. We're a little tiny, sleepy bedroom community for Charlotte, but we love living out here. And I've lived in North Carolina since I was 5. I don't know if you can tell by my accent, but I'm Southern. Then I was born in Tennessee, lived in Louisiana, and then we moved to North Carolina, and I've lived all over the state. So, yeah, been here for a while.
So if people were going to visit Charlotte, what would be the one thing that they should go and see?
It would depend. If they are outdoorsy people, I would say the National Whitewater Center for sure. You can whitewater raft, you can kayak, they have music events, little festivals, all kinds of stuff. If you're a sports watcher like I am, a Panthers game, a Charlotte FC game, or a Hornets game, if you like to see teams win, do Charlotte FC. If you just want to be there for the camaraderie, you can see the Hornets or the Panthers. They are not having great seasons lately. But yeah, and then my husband and I hang out at lots of small bars and restaurants that are music venues too. And that's what we love to do the most. So I would say, come to one of our places with us and see a great local band.
Awesome, awesome. And so I know our topic for today is dealing with narcissistic abuse and overcoming
Yep.
it. Um, what why do you what made you want to come on this show and really talk about that, and why is this so important to you?
I would say I wanted to come on the show for two reasons. Number one, for my own healing. Um, it's a continuous walk through a healing pathway. I really hate the word journey, so I don't want to say that, but healing is continuous and it's not linear. So to be able to talk about it and hear other perspectives on narcissistic abuse and healing is really good for me. And secondly, because I think there are a lot of folks out there like I was a few years ago, and I didn't realize that was what was going on. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know to put narcissistic abuse to it. I didn't know that was the title. Once you can label it and name it, you can do research. You can start to learn more about it. You can learn how to protect yourself. You can learn if you can stay or if you need to go. So I think it's really important to share experiences as much as possible for folks who may not have figured it out yet.
No, that's great. And Shannon, in your journey, when did you, and I know that when you're in the middle of it, you don't recognize it until much later on, but where did that narcissistic abuse start for you? And how did it evolve and adapt in your life?
Sure. My mom was great with little kids. I think it got bad when we got a little bit older. So I have a brother who's 3 years younger than I am, and we're very aligned on what happened. Sometimes in narcissistic families, you'll find siblings who had two different childhoods, but my brother and I kind of feel like we had the same one. So when we were in elementary school, our mom was very, very strict, and we just thought that's how moms were. And she talked about going to a parenting workshop through the PTA where they said, what would your children think of you, or how would they remember you if you died right now? And she said that I'm very strict. Didn't change how she parented. That's what she knew. One incident that I remember very clearly from when I was 6, I was sitting in the bathtub, taking a bath, and I told her, I was crying, so I cried to her, you never show me any love. And I think I was mad because I was taking a bath. I probably wanted to be doing something else. But she went in the kitchen and she got a Tupperware cup, a quart-sized Tupperware cup, and filled it with ice water and came in the bathroom and threw it in my face. And she said, I had to make you stop crying. I had to get your attention. And looking back on that now, I realize how hard it is, why it's so hard for me to reach out for help, for me to tell people I'm not feeling good with this relationship. I don't feel loved here. Because when I did that, when I reached out, just out of instinct, nobody teaches you to do that when you're 6. Just out of instinct, I literally had cold water poured on me. So looking back, that's the first incident I really remember. So it has been going on for a while.
And how did that affect you in your childhood, where like as a child, that just makes you very cautious of what you expose to the authority figure in your life? How did that evolve in your relationships growing up?
So I was always the leader of every group. I got to be the person that set the tone. At home, I was the person who could read the tone. I could read every bit of energy in every room that I walked in. But I always had a lot of surface friends. I had a lot of people I knew and acquaintances. It was a long time before I had a best friend or somebody that I really could tell secrets to. Even now, I have good friends, but I don't tell anybody everything. I would say that I shaped myself to be as perfect as possible. My grades were great. I never got in trouble at school. I was never late to a class. I didn't make straight A's, but I made really good grades. Did all the things. I couldn't do sports. I was not sporty. And the one thing I couldn't control was my weight. But everything else that I could control, I wanted to be perfect so there would be nothing to get in trouble for. And even as an adult, I will use the phrase like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble. Like, I really love Coach purses. I'll order one. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble with my husband. I'm not going to get in trouble with my husband. He's not a parent. He has never said a word about it, but that's still the way that I think about doing things that might make someone else the least bit unhappy.
Now, when did you first realize that maybe there was an issue? Or, I mean, because I'm assuming you even talked about earlier on when you were first talking that once you learn about what it is, and you can name it and stuff. And I'm sure you couldn't name it back when you were a child, but did you realize that something was off, or did you just figure this was the way life was, and not until later on in life did you realize that it was all part of a narcissistic behavior? Or what was the progression there?
I would say at first I knew that I didn't like it. My mom would be a really great representative out of the community. We would go to her friends' houses or have friends over, and she would act very different. And so I realized there was something going on. Like, I loved when we would go over to her friend's house because I had a different mom at that point. When I was in high school, number one, I volunteered to be a counselor at a camp for a week for free to get out of the house. I went to a summer-long math and science camp to get out of the house. And I'm an English major. Like, I'm not, not a math and science person at all, but it was a way to be gone. And so as I was in my early 40s when I heard the words narcissistic abuse, and when I looked back over my whole life, every single thing clicked into place. And that was the point that I knew that this is what I had been dealing with for most of my life. But I knew something was off. I knew other people felt differently about their moms than I did. And it's really hard, even as a kid, to be like, I really don't like or feel safe with my mom. And I never said those words out loud, but I describe her friends as safe havens. Because, like I said, she was a great representative when she was out of the house.
Yeah. No, it's really tough. And I mean, like, there's so many subtypes of narcissism. My education is in psychology. I have the equivalent of a master's in psychology. And it took me a really long time to come to terms with the fact that trauma or brokenness attracts that same type of personality. And the reason that my parents were together was because they both struggled with a different subtype of narcissism. And just hearing what you're describing, it sort of sounds like malignant narcissism. Have you thought about or gone into the subtypes of what you dealt with growing up with your mom?
I have, and definitely malignant narcissism. My mom did not have the rage that some narcissists have, or at least not as we got older. There was physical abuse when we were younger, and that could look like rage. But I have friends whose mothers, even as adults, just screamed and yelled at them. And my mom didn't do that. She was more passive aggressive and underhanded and backhanded compliments. For example, this isn't even a compliment. I was about 4 weeks postpartum with my second baby. I had gotten E. coli, systemic E. coli in the hospital, and had to be in the hospital for another week after being home for a week. I was very sick. And I was finally home. We were out somewhere in the sunshine, and she looked at my hair and she said, "If I buy the Miss Clairol, will you do something about that hair?" And like, I had almost died. Literally, I was on 9 different antibiotics. I was in the hospital longer than people who have heart attacks. And, she's worried about my hair. So yeah, I would say malignant, definitely, but with that passive aggressive, underhanded kind of thing to it.
For our viewers, who may not know what narcissism is, and may just be like, oh, this shit sounds like a parent being a little angry, or, being a little frustrated. I've seen parents who are frustrated. What is the difference between narcissism and just regular frustration or anger?
I will like the difference between the way I treated my kids and the way my mom treated me. Narcissism is systemic in the home. Everybody participates in the narcissism, whether you're the narcissist or the enabler or a scapegoat or a golden child. I don't think there's a system in my home. We kind of built a community. Narcissism does come a lot of times, as Sydney said, from trauma. And I look back over my mom's life, and I can imagine she moved a lot as a kid. She was a military kid, and I can imagine that there was trauma involved with that. My dad was adopted. I can imagine that there's brokenness with that, and that's what attracted him to her. So I think narcissism, it's something that lasts a really long time. You can get frustrated with a kid and you can put them in timeout, or you can take away their phone. You can do a lot of things, but it's not something that lasts forever. It's not something that they're afraid of happening every single day. My kids are both terrible at reading the room. Like it's something we worked on in therapy. Every therapy session I was ever in with them, I was like, can we talk about how to read other people's emotional temperature when you walk into a room? Because that's second nature to me. My kids haven't had to learn how to do that. So I think probably the biggest thing is what I said before, that narcissism is a system in a family, and everybody, knowingly or unknowingly, participates in that system.
You just said something there.
It hits so deeply for me to hear you say that. I didn't ever recognize that in the system that I was growing up in. It just wasn't something that I was cognitively aware of until long after I had lost my mom to suicide. It wasn't something that really registered to me. But my mom had suffered from communal narcissism, and it was on the brink, though, of that malignant narcissism, because she was very aggressive in her tendencies. It just wasn't displayed around other people. And the only thing that separates her from that communal to malignant is that antisocial perspective. She was the most social person in the room. Whereas my dad really thrived. His environment was that cerebral narcissism, where he had to be the most intelligent person in the room at all times, or he felt inferior. And he had built his identity on that. I didn't realize as a young adult and going into relationships as a kid how much that role model of a relationship would affect my relationships, my intimate relationships and dating relationships in the future. How did growing up with a mom that suffered from a form of narcissism affect your relationships?
When I was in high school, I dated the same person for almost 3 years. We were way too young for that intense of a relationship, but that's what we had. And we reconnected many years ago. And he said, I was just always like really uncomfortable around your mom. She kind of would like hit on people. She would hit on him. She would hit on guy friends that came over. She assumed everybody, wanted to be with her. She wouldn't use an Uber even as an old lady because she was afraid, she's like, they might take advantage of me and I can't fight back. I'm an old lady. And so like this narcissistic fear, this feeling that like I am so beautiful that people just want me and they can't help themselves. Um, I that just I didn't want to be visible to men. I didn't want to feel fear every time I left my home. So I looked for people who felt very safe. And what I learned about safety and narcissism is that only narcissism feels safe if that's the only kind of relationship and love you've ever had. So I definitely ended up marrying somebody with some of those cerebral narcissism symptoms that you mentioned. And it felt like home. I mean, it felt so comfortable. It was not good, but it felt comfortable. So I think it just led me to choose people that I don't think I knew what kind of love I was looking for. I think I only knew what I had seen and experienced at that time.
what we search for as humans. And just the basis of psychology says that we look for things that are familiar to crave comfort. And it's interesting because cerebral narcissism and covert narcissism mirror each other very similarly. It's just the display that the public gets is kind of a little bit different. So it's very common that people that have suffered in a narcissistic relationship go for a different type of narcissism because it's familiar, yet it's different enough that we have disassociated from that level of abuse. You had mentioned, though, that your mom had these outward tendencies. Was that not more of the, I mean, and I'm just curious what homework you've done on this more so. At first, I had started with that malignant, but then you said that she really craved that approval and stuff. That almost sounds like grandiosis.
There were times that she would say out loud with her entire chest, "We are better than them," whoever them was. I don't associate with people like that because I'm better than them. When she got older and finally decided she was going to seek some mental health support and therapy, she didn't want to pay for it. So she went to like the county. They were offering some free counseling or something. And she left because she did not like what was on the intake sheet. She said, "I'm not in a gang. I don't do drugs. I'm not like these people. I don't need this help." So there was a lot of growing up, these people, those people, better than them. I was a military child and my father was a lieutenant colonel in the army. And, nobody else could ever live up to that. Our table was set every night with silverware plates, cloth napkins that I ironed, and tablecloths. We had a full meal. We never, I can count on one hand the number of times we just had sandwiches for dinner because we just didn't do that. We weren't those kind of people. So, yeah, definitely some of that too.
So, I want to take a step back, for a second. I'm sorry. When we were talking about what narcissism is, you had said that, everybody plays a role in it. And for those who are experiencing it, I know they may be going, "Well, hold on, I'm not playing a part in it, I'm not being a narcissist, so how am I playing a part in it?" And I'll follow up with something afterwards, but good.
Yeah. So when you look at the narcissistic system in families, there's the narcissist. They usually have an enabler, someone who ignores their narcissism, someone who props them up when they're having a crisis of confidence or whatever. And normally, especially in a two-child family, there will be a scapegoat. So one kid who gets all the crap, all the blame for everything. And then you have a golden child, the one who can do no wrong. My brother and I could not figure out who the golden child was because we both felt like we were scapegoats. And what we figured out was that our aunt, who was 10 years younger than my mom, and my mom kind of raised her. My aunt was the golden child. She could do no wrong. My brother and I were the scapegoats. We didn't know it. We didn't know how to escape it or how to not be it. But when I look back, that's how it was structured for sure.
And just out of curiosity, the aunt that you had mentioned, is she younger than your mom?
Yep, she's 10 years younger.
Yep, it's very common that the golden child or whoever functions in the role of the golden child is younger than the narcissist because when there's two siblings, especially, are you and your brother close in age?
We're 3 years apart, so not too
Yep,
close.
that'll do it for you because
Yeah.
my closest brother in age and I are 5 years apart, and my youngest brother and I are 7 years apart. So my middle brother was the golden child because there were three of us. So I was old enough by an age gap that there was still enough room in our sibling unit to fill that golden child role. But when there's two siblings close in age, it's very common that the golden child becomes a younger sibling or somebody outside of the immediate family circle that fills that golden child role. So I appreciate you saying
Yeah.
because it's really common and people don't know how to identify those signs either.
And I just want to say that I think there's many different dynamics that people can deal with narcissism. I mean, I definitely see that you were dealing with it as a child to a parent. But I think a parent can do it to another parent. I know because I experienced that myself, and part of the reason why I, in my head, I was allowing it was because I was trying to protect my children from experiencing it.
Yep.
And I felt like if I had her focus on me, then she wasn't focused on being a narcissist to the kids, you
Yeah.
know? Because that was her weapon. Her weapon was the kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, as long as I'm the target, I'm protecting them. But I would say that definitely wasn't good, because I know as soon as, well, not as soon, but after I was divorced, I know my kids felt her narcissism, more recently. And it broke that was like my breaking point, was because it was like, I'm not protecting my kids anymore. Like, she's experiencing it. So my wrath started going back on her. Probably haven't handled it the best, but, like, I just, yeah, it's, and now it's cost me a little bit with my kids, but I'm hoping in the end that they'll see that what I'm doing now is to stop the abuse from happening. And it might be too late, but we'll see. But I think
I want to encourage you on a couple of points there. And number one is they will see it. My kids saw it with their dad. They will see it sooner or later. And as far as you feeling like you're not handling it well, there's no rule book on this. And there are some people in this world who, no matter what you say, no matter how perfectly you say it, no matter how gentle your tone is, no matter how perfect your intention is, they will take it the way they're going to take it. And that's not your responsibility. So try not to give yourself too much crap over not handling it well. The fact that you're handling it at all is pretty amazing.
And that's such a crucial point, Shannon. I'm really glad you said that, because narcissism, when you are in a relationship, whether that is in your immediate family or just your immediate circle of influence, because typically narcissists have gotten good at hiding this from their outer circles. It's usually their inner circle that's affected and their immediate family that's affected. That being said, that relationship is portrayed differently based on the volatility, the comfortability of that relationship. That's where we start to see the true characteristics of a narcissist, regardless of the subtype. All of that being said, I mean, I'm dealing with some narcissistic tendencies with my daughter's adoptive parents that live outside of the country. And John witnessed that affecting his children when he was trying to be the one that was the brunt force of all of that. When you recognize that, and I know that's vague because it's different stages for people at different points of the relationships where they start to really identify and name that, and then give authority to themselves based on that definition. How do you establish boundaries with somebody that, say, you're going to keep a relationship with that suffers from some of these tendencies, be it DSM diagnosed or not?
I think the most important thing that people need to remember about boundaries is you set them and you hold them. You can't get mad at somebody else for crossing your boundaries. If they cross your boundary, you have to take action as you have said you would. So my mom loved to talk about who was fat, who had gained weight, what somebody's body looked like. And I finally said, Mom, I'm not having those conversations with you anymore. And if that's what you want to talk about, you need to talk to somebody else about it. And if you try to talk to me about it, I will end the conversation. And if you don't let it end, I will leave. And I had to leave a couple of times before she understood that I was serious and that I was not having conversations about what people's bodies look like. Of course, she crossed that boundary. It was naturally what she did. She wasn't going to stop doing it just because I asked her to. So I think that's the most.
Narcissists thrive in that space where you give them boundaries and they try to see if they can impede upon them. So it is a guarantee, it is a certainty that if you set boundaries with a narcissist, that they will undoubtedly attempt to cross them multiple times and in multiple different ways.
And they will be mad at you for setting boundaries, because the people who get mad at you and don't support you for setting boundaries are the ones who have been benefiting from you not having boundaries all that time. So yeah, they're going to get mad at you for setting boundaries. They're going to get mad at you for holding boundaries, and they're going to try really hard to break that boundary down so that they don't have to live by it anymore. But it's our responsibility as the boundary upper to hold it and to not let them get away with crossing it.
And how do you set boundaries with someone that you love? Because a lot of us have a narcissist in our life that we love, and we don't want them to feel unloved by our boundary setting, but we also want to maintain the emotional position that keeps us safe from their tendencies.
It took a long time before I could set boundaries with my mom. So I don't want people to think that you should be able to do it today. But it's really just having that conversation without emotion, without bringing up stuff that happened in the past so they can try to defend themselves. Just to say, Mom, I don't want to talk about how much my house cost anymore. If you want to talk about that and you keep bringing it up, then we will not be talking about, I will leave the conversation. It doesn't mean that you have to leave every conversation. You can still talk to them about the weather or what you're having for dinner or how your kids are doing in school, but you are leaving the conversation of how much your house costs or what people's bodies look like or whatever it is that you've set a boundary about. And I will tell you that a narcissist will find the exact buttons that hurt you the most, and those are the ones they'll push. And if it's your mom, it's because she installed it.
I think the other important thing to look at, and I think you started to bring it up even with the boundary settings, is that for anybody who's listening and doesn't know what it is to be with like a narcissist or to be abused, I also want to say that the narcissist has wonderful qualities about them, and good qualities about them. Or like they're your mom, they're your dad, and you're going to innately love them. And so you're deep down hoping that they love you enough that they're going to be wanting to change and not treat you the way that they're going to want to follow those boundaries, those borders that you put up, but they don't. And it's a thing that it took me, I think, 7 years to finally walk out. And when I say it took every bit of me to leave my marriage, it took every bit, because there was a part of my ex-wife that was beautiful and awesome, and that's why I married her, but the narcissism killed every ounce of that. And it's not just for anybody who's like, oh well, if it's so horrible, why don't just people just get up and leave and walk away? Or I want people to understand that you see the good. I think a lot of people who stay with narcissists and abusers overall, what we don't realize is that there's a whole other part of the person who is good, who makes you feel special. And I think narcissists really have an innate quality to make you feel just as good as they make you feel like trash.
My mom was an amazing entertainer. She was a lovely hostess. She loved to have parties. She was a fantastic cook. Had a great laugh. She was very funny, and she was my mom. And I know how it is when you leave a narcissistic marriage. People kind of forgive you for that, but it's very hard for people in general to forgive you for not having a relationship with your mom, or for being very low contact, or your dad, whoever the narcissist is in your family. People just don't understand it, or they want to dismiss it, and they say, but she's your mom. Yes, she's the person I should have felt the most safe with. She's the person I should have been able to go to for support first. She's the person that should have been happiest for me of anybody. And that wasn't the experience that I had.
It is, it breaks my heart and it's empowering at the same time to hear you say that, because I have experienced that in my relationships where, because of the role modeling that was demonstrated to me, I was attracted to people with very similar qualities and tendencies. And I had to name what that attraction was very early on in order to find my husband, who I'm now married to, who's the complete opposite of all of that. But it was really uncomfortable at first because it was so unfamiliar. And that meant that I had to name the narcissism in my mom and my dad. And one of the biggest things for me was when I got pregnant with my oldest daughter, who I ended up placing for adoption. I was coerced and manipulated into placing my daughter for adoption because I was told that I wasn't enough and that I was going to be like my mother, who had taken her life due to a drug addiction. And the consequence of needing my dad's approval so desperately as the only girl in my family was him losing his daughter, but more importantly, it was me losing mine. And that's something that I always have to live with now because of his narcissistic tendencies that will never be healed, that were a result of me not knowing how to address it or how to set boundaries in that relationship. One of the biggest struggles that I have encountered is that when you set boundaries with a narcissist, it makes conversation feel so superficial that it almost feels like that relationship that you so desperately still want, especially with that immediate family, be it your mom or your dad. It feels like it's gone to this level of superficialness that it's like they're on the outermost circle of my life. And that's something that I still really struggle with.
Yeah.
Is there a way to have more meaningful conversation with somebody that might be a narcissist or that has those narcissistic tendencies that doesn't make you feel like you've surrendered the entire relationship?
Not that I have found. Towards the end of my mom's life, everything was, what are you having for dinner? She lived in a care facility, and it was how much she hated everything in the care facility. We never really had deep conversations. Even it got to the point that even about my kids, it was very superficial. And there were times when my children were going through things, when I was going through divorce, when I was going through health issues. I had surgery more than once when I didn't even tell her I was having surgery, because it was easier to figure it out myself than it was to deal with her. I never told her that I was diabetic, and she died not knowing that, because it was easier to hide it than it was to deal with her reaction to it. So I don't know how you have a deep conversation with a narcissist once you have some boundaries, because they are, I was so afraid that she was going to find a way to make that conversation about her or violate boundaries in some way. And so, yeah, it was, what are you having for dinner? Did you hear about that thing on the news? What do you think of the weather? You know, that was, can I bring you some Diet Coke? That was pretty much it. And there were lots of times where I would say to my husband or my brother, I miss a mom. I don't miss my mom, but I miss a mom that would have supported me in this, or would have been there when I had surgery, or would have celebrated with me when I got engaged or when we got married. Instead, what my mom says was, that is a beautiful dress. I can't believe it came in your size. Yeah, I missed having a mom that said, oh my God, you look so beautiful. You look so happy. And that's the shame. For all of us that miss that mom, that's a shame.
And even after my mom passed away, my dad married someone who later went on to adopt me. And I don't think that she struggles with narcissistic tendencies, but I think that she's very easily manipulated. And I think that it's why she's been with my dad as long as she has, because my dad has that cerebral narcissism And she really thrives off of putting him on that pedestal of being the highest person in the room. So she'll never go against what he says. So because of that, her and I have never been able to have a genuine relationship because she is the enabler in that relationship, going back to
Yeah.
that narcissistic family unit. And it's really unfortunate because she's a wonderful woman and I love my dad dearly. Like, I don't say anything about my mom, about my dad, the same way that I'm sure that you don't, to talk poorly on them, because what they did for me and who they shaped me to be, I would not be who I am without their positive traits. I just had to learn to be that strainer or that filter, so to speak, that filtered through the stuff that wasn't going to benefit me in my long-term relationships or my career path or my businesses, and what the character traits that they had were that would benefit the growth of my relationships and my business. And doing that, though, putting on that lens and that filter feels almost impossible. I'm not going to lie to you. When you walk this path of healing from narcissistic trauma and abuse, how do you, as an individual, filter through the good and the bad so that we're not taking that person as the collective bad, but we're acknowledging the good that they contributed, and we are also acknowledging the character traits about them that are not functional to our life or would be healthy in our relationships?
I had to spend some time with my brother and ask, because I was in a very dark place about my mom. Like, there was nothing good. And I had to, I said, like, I know there had to be good things. And he remembered her be really good with us when we were young. She was very involved with our school. Anytime there was a meeting, she was there. She cared a lot about our community. She was a Girl Scout leader. Like I said, she was a hostess and she loved to cook, and she taught us both how to cook. My brother and I are both great cooks. And that became really important in our family. I know that, it's like not that big a deal. You can throw dinner on the table, but sometimes I feel like every day is chopped. I don't know what's going to be in the fridge, and I know I can pull something out.
Food
But,
brings people together. That's a big bragging point. Keep going.
Yeah. And I try really hard now that I've done so much therapy, to not dwell on the things that I'm not because of what I endured. And take responsibility, because you can have damage and trauma that is not your fault, but healing it is your responsibility. It's my job not to inflict that on the people around me. It's my job not to use it as an excuse. And I got to a really kind of like victim-y, martyr-y kind of place. And I just said, I can't be that person, because I don't like that person. So I use the Finch app, and I actually have a habit every day of don't be a victim, walk out of darkness, take responsibility. And another thing that I've done, this sounds a little crazy, but I started lying to myself, and I put a note on my bathroom mirror that says, my mom would be so proud of me. I don't know if she would or not, but I'm choosing to believe that somewhere there is a mom that is really proud of me, because I can't live the rest of my life. I can't live 30 more years feeling like I have nobody who thinks that I've done well in this world. And I know my kids do, my husband does, but you need that there's a primal part of you that needs your mom and your dad to be proud of you. So I started lying.
I will say that Oliver. No, but let me validate that for a second, though, because the reason that humans suffer from things like narcissism or mental disabilities is because we live in a state of perpetual sin nature that is not how God designed us to be from the viewpoint of John and I. And because of that, in your mom's perfect state of being, the way that without sin nature, God created her to be, then from that position, your mom absolutely would be proud of you. And that's not lying to yourself. That's recognizing her for her spiritual higher self, that she was created to be in a heavenly realm. And I've had to do the same thing with my mom, because I don't know about you, but for me, when my mom took her life, And not that it was the same circumstances, but I struggled with people in my life saying, well, if your mom took her own life, then she's not going to heaven. I don't believe that to be true. My mom struggled with things that were not what God intended for her and that got to her through sin and through Satan himself. And I know, because I saw the pieces of my mom, just like you did with your mom, in social interactions or with your friends' moms and parents and all of those outings, you saw a different side of her.
Mhm.
I choose to believe, because I know who my God is and I know who she was created to be. I choose to believe in the better version of her. And it gives me peace. And anybody that criticizes that peace that it gives you with that note, that's not lying to yourself. That's recognizing who she was created to be. And it's important for us as daughters and sons to be able to recognize who that higher person would have been and still love and appreciate them for the capacity that existed there while acknowledging the flaws and trauma that they contributed. It's being able to forgive and release them for that that's so crucial for daughters like you and me.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you saying that.
And I wanted to take it just even a step further. Like, and I can use my ex. I know that my ex, in her personality, if you told her that she couldn't do something, that was fuel to do it. And in her twisted mind, her narcissistic behavior was doing what she thought was best, probably for me and for her kids, because that's what fueled her on. That's what gave her, like, every time somebody doubted her, that gave her the strength. That's
Right.
you know, like, I would also always say, if she needed to be miserable to be motivated, or to be happy, to whatever. I in your mom's point of view, she probably thought she was doing right by you, to do best for you. And I'm not justifying what she did. I'm not justifying what my ex does. I'm not justifying what a narcissist behavior. But somehow in their twisted mind, they think they're doing right. They think they're
Yeah.
helping. And just to say that, as we've talked a lot about narcissism, I do want to focus a little bit on how to heal, because I don't want to leave our audience just with, okay, this is what a narcissist is, this is our experiences with them. How did you heal? What are some steps that you can give people who may be suffering from from traumatic narcissist abuse? What are ways to heal? What are some steps? You can give at least one thing to say, okay, start by doing this.
I really think it takes professional help, whether that's from a therapist, a pastoral counselor, whoever in your life is your trusted professional. I really do think it takes that help. I did years of cognitive behavioral therapy, and that helped me for that point in time, for that period of time. The trauma kept coming up and coming up, and I had several people recommend EMDR for trauma resolution, and I did that. And before I was allowed to do that, I had to do dialectical behavioral therapy, and I worked with an adult children of addicts therapist. And what she did in the family map was show me all the weight of managing all of this was on me. And if I didn't take care of my mother, if I didn't take care of my father, if I didn't deal with all their stuff, it was going to fall to my children. And I couldn't let that happen. I could not let my children bear the brunt of my mother. So that kind of gave me strength to be somewhat her caretaker for the rest of her life. I was the one who took her grocery shopping, took her shoe shopping, took her to church if she wanted to go to church. Like, that all fell to me. So the EMDR helped in the moment, but after she passed, I did some grief work and I did Brainspotting, and those also helped. But I think the thing that helped the most was time after she passed. Time, validation, like talking to my brother a lot, that yes, this is the same thing we both experienced. And I had a guest on my podcast. I don't think the episode is played yet, but he said, trauma can't really be healed. It just has to be left. And I don't know if I agree, but I do know I've thought about it a lot. That maybe this mom-sized hole in my heart will never be filled, but maybe I can make it matter less because of other things in my life. Like when I decided to get married again, I was dating a lot of men like my narcissistic ex-husband. And I was like, this is not what I don't want this for the rest of my life. And I looked around at the men who I really, really liked, my brother-in-law, my neighbor, my brother. And the thing they all had in common was they took care of the people around them, and they took care of the people around them. And I wanted a guy who I know if my friend called and said, I'm stuck on the highway, my husband would say, all right, I'm on my way. And that is not a narcissist. And when I started looking for that guy, I finally started dating people that made me feel for real safe and comfortable and at home and loved. So it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of deciding that you're not going to fall into it and stay there. And it takes sometimes some professional help to figure out what you can heal and what you can leave. A lot of people go no contact. I didn't feel like I had that option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's fair. I think that if my mom was still here, I wouldn't feel that I had that option either, because of what she would have overcome if she had made it out on the other side. And I don't want to discourage viewers to not have a relationship either with the people in their life that may or may not have narcissistic tendencies. By DSM diagnosis, you have to meet 5 out of 9 of the characteristics of that on a consistent basis. This is not encouraged to self-diagnose. This is encouraged to talk to a mental or professional health provider to evaluate the people in your life that may be making you feel that you're struggling with this type of relationship. I think that it's very valuable to get outside input that's emotionally removed from the situation. It's really crucial. And like you said, for me, it was being the mom that my mom wasn't to me that healed me the most. It was all of the people that said, you're going to turn out exactly like her. It was doing the exact opposite and still having a thriving business and a coaching business and owning a mobile application and doing these podcasts and speaking out to where I get calls from all over the world where it's like, I heard your podcast and I need to talk to you. And loving on my babies more so than anything else has healed me more so than having a relationship with my mom, God love her, ever would have at this. So it's just different for all of those walks.
So if present Shannon could go back to any point in your childhood and talk to you at that age, what time period would you go back to, and what would you say to yourself?
I would go back to 6-year-old Shannon. The Shannon who was in the bathtub, the Shannon who was ironing napkins in my dad's work shirts, the Shannon who felt like I was emotionally holding everybody together. And that if I let go and if I didn't worry about something, it was going to implode. I would tell her, let it. Because if I had done that, if I had let go, would my mom have gotten the help that she needed? Would my dad have realized that he couldn't be absent, that he had to be there and take care of us? Would other relatives have seen this isn't normal? Would her friends have said, okay, you got to do something because you're not doing the right thing? If I had let it go, maybe something would have changed. And so that's what I would tell 6-year-old Shannon. This is not your job. Your job is to be a kid. Be a kid.
Absolutely. So Shannon, as we start to draw into a close here, we got a couple more things, but tell our viewers what's next for you.
What's next for me is I am working on a novel, tentatively called Salt River. It's a little witchy, a little beachy, a little political, and a little bit of people realizing what happens when they don't listen to their gut. So we'll see where it goes. hoping to build my coaching business up a little bit. I love coaching people in liminal space, just like between the no longer and the not yet, helping people take that next step. So I'd love to do more of that kind of coaching.
That's awesome. So now it's going to take us to one of my favorite segments that we have, and that is our key takeaways.
Key takeaways.
And so this is where we just go and we say that what we took away from this conversation. And for me, I think it's very evident that if you think that you're involved in any part of a narcissistic abuse, then first of all, it's not your fault. B, get some counseling, get some direction, get some professional care, that they can give you the proper steps to take. But it's not your fault. I know that, for me, I always felt like, that it was my fault. I always blaming myself, that I could have done better. I could have done something to prevent it. But so I want to speak to you. If you're going through it, it's not your fault. It's not something you did. It's someone needs professional care, and you need professional care because you need to go through this, and you need to get help healing, because healing is really important.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And, for me, it was really that like narcissists are still lovable in and of themselves, like that they have a core to themselves that is beyond that facade and that protection film, if you will, of narcissism. There's somebody that's more to them than those characteristics, and having the sympathy and the empathy to recognize that it's something that they suffered from, and whether it be biological or so whether it's nature versus nurture, that there's more to that person than just what they demonstrate to us in their most toxic moments. It's been really crucial for me in terms of being able to forgive my mom, to be able to recognize that she was more than her flaws. Does that make sense? Shannon, if everybody had lost service except for this moment of the episode, and you wanted our viewers to have one takeaway from everything that we've discussed today, what would you say to them and why?
I would say, even though it feels really hard, love yourself to do whatever it is that you need to do to feel safe in your relationship, to treat your anxiety, your depression, your CPTSD, all of the things that can happen from living with a narcissist. It is the hardest thing to reach out the first time, but you can do it. It takes 5 minutes of insane courage to reach out the first time.
Of that.
And you can do it.
My dad used to always say, I just have to say this because going back to the key things, how people have positive characteristics. Every time that I said that something was too hard, whether it was a track meet or a school assignment or a workout that I had to complete, he would say, you can do anything for 5 minutes, or you can do anything one time, or you can do anything, whatever it was, whatever the increment of time was or the increment of measurement. That became my dad's staple saying, is you can do anything for fill in X amount. So when you said it takes 5 minutes of incredible courage, that really resonates with me, because my dad, even though he suffers from some of these same tendencies, if I gave him no context and said, I have to do something and it's only going to take 5 minutes, but I can't bring myself to do it, his exact words would be, you can do anything for 5 minutes.
That's awesome. And thank you for that, Shannon. And this is the part of the show where we encourage our listeners to write on whatever platform you're listening to it in the comment section what your key takeaway is. We love seeing how the show is impacting you, but it also gives us feedback on each episode and to see what you take away, what you've learned, and it helps us. And I know stay tuned we'll be making announcements about key takeaways. So there's some stuff to come with that. But thank you. And again, make sure you're commenting your key takeaways. And now we're going to move to our final segment of the final five.
The final five.
Yeah, so we're going to go to the final part of our show, the final five, where me and Sydney will go back and forth and ask Shannon five questions. And I'll start off by asking Shannon, who was your hero and why?
So that is hard to say. As I've gotten older, I don't know who it would have been as a kid, but as I've gotten older, Jimmy Carter. I just see him as such a humanitarian and such a strong man of faith and just a good and honest man. And that is heroic in these days.
You're not wrong. All right. Question number 2 for you. Don't feel like you have to answer these heavy. I'm trying to stay on topic with a little bit of humor. If Narcissists had a warning label, what would it say?
Approach with caution.
Fair enough. It's a good.
Use your discernment.
Use your discernment. Yeah. At user discretion, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Mine would have been run, Forrest, run.
Sean, your dad joke's already up. You used it already.
He only gets one per episode.
Right? One per episode. I can't handle anymore.
They try to keep me on a strict diet.
Oh boy.
The next question is, if there was one book or quote or saying or verse that you live by or has made the greatest impact on you, what would that be?
I have 3. The first one is nobody ever bet enough on a winning horse. The second one is excellent is an act. Excellent is a habit, not an act. It's what we do every day that makes a difference. And the last one, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but basically, if you want people to do something, you don't assign them tasks and tell them to gather wood and tell them how the boat needs to be built. You make them long for the expanse of the sea. And that's how I try to approach leadership.
I like that too. All right. The next question for you is, what TV character screams total narcissist to you that maybe people would pick up on?
You know, as you mentioned, cerebral narcissist, Sheldon Cooper.
Okay. What show is that in?
Big Bang Theory.
Okay. So for like character off TV, you're not referring to like character or both?
The character in the TV show.
Okay. All right.
He's very smart, but everything revolves around him.
Yep. Okay. That's pretty funny. I like that one. That's a good one.
And the final question is, if you could sit down and have a conversation and a beer or coffee with, who would it be? And they can be living or dead.
This is going to be an answer you may never have heard before, but Joseph, Jesus' stepdad. That his relationship with Mary, with God, with Jesus is so absolutely fascinating to me and always has been. I just would love to know like what he thought and felt in those moments where he was finding out what was happening and what his role was going to be. And I've always been fascinated with Joseph. I've written devotions about him. I've done all kinds of things, but I would love to have coffee with Joseph and be like,
yeah,
dude, what happened?
No, that's a really good answer, actually, especially on this topic, because how selfless of a man does it take to trust in the woman who was pregnant as a virgin and say, okay, I trust you and I'm here for whatever God's plan is, and be fully committed to that, especially then.
Yeah.
So I love that answer.
And like what we
I
don't
love
know a
it
lot
too.
about Jesus's early life. What was, what was he like when he was 12? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Totally.
No, and I think it's really cool because when you first said Joseph, I'm thinking Joseph of the Old Testament, you know? And it was the lesser of the two Josephs that
That was
are
my
living.
first thought too.
So that was cool. That was really cool. That's why I love the question.
I mean, I'd also love to have a beer with Dolly Parton, but you know.
That too. Gotta
Yeah.
throw that in. That'd be
Oh
a
yeah.
fun one. One fun one,
There you
one
go.
serious one, right?
Well, this has been a really great experience for me, and I hope for y'all and for your listeners as well. I hope folks no, I just hope folks took something away from it and know that there are ways to manage your relationship with a narcissist. You don't have to go no contact, but you also don't have to continue to be damaged.
Huge takeaways. Shannon, thank you so much for being here today. And how can people get a hold of you and how can they find you off of this podcast?
So my website is fullcirclelifeandhealthcoaching.com, and everything is linked on there. That's the best place to find me, and would love to hear from folks.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes. And remember, when we take the time to hear someone's story, it gives us the opportunity to find common ground. Thank you again, Shannon, for being our guest today, for Sydney Curtin and myself, who have been your host. It has been our pleasure, and you have been listening to the Common Ground podcast. Have a blessed night.
And that's it for today's episode of the Common Ground podcast. We hope you're leaving with a little more perspective, a little more purpose, and a whole lot more inspiration.
So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you to our special guest.
If today's conversation moved you, encouraged you, or challenged you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, rate it, leave us a review. Your support helps us reach more people who need to find their own common ground.
So for John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin,
we'll see you right here next week, same time, same place on the Common Ground podcast. Make it a great week.